Hello guys, I'm Tom, and today we're going to take a look at what the Rage virus is 28 years later. There are ideas that don't just shake fiction, they pierce right through it. They stay with you, etched into your skin and bones long after the screen goes dark. And one of those ideas, perhaps the most disturbing one left behind by 28 years later, is this. The Rage virus didn't die. It didn't disappear. It didn't weaken with time. It survived. And most chilling of all, it evolved. Far from extinction, this biological nightmare has mutated. It has transformed into something far more complex, more dangerous, more unpredictable. What was once a brutal and immediate infection has now become a system of organic adaptation. It doesn't just kill, it learns. And it does so with terrifying efficiency. The new strains don't just seek to infect, they seek to endure. Their behavior has become refined, and their violence, already extreme, has turned into a surgical tool for expansion. In this video, we're going to dive deep into the heart of that metamorphosis. We'll dig into the origins of Rage, from the devastating events of 28 days later, through the unstoppable spread in 28 weeks later, up to this new breaking point. An era where Rage is no longer just a symptom, but a strategy. We'll analyze hidden clues and subtle signs scattered across the films, comics, and additional materials that have been warning us, for years, that the Rage virus still had much more to show and destroy. Because if there's one thing that sets Rage apart from any other viral threat in horror cinema history, it's its ruthless simplicity. It's not black magic. It's not sci-fi with walking corpses. It's not mythological monsters or demons disguised as disease. Rage infects what already exists, human beings, and it turns them into pure biological fury. These aren't zombies. They are living bodies, fully consumed by violence, by destruction, by chaos. They don't think. They don't feel. They don't stop. They only destroy. It all began with a poorly calibrated experiment, a cross between the Ebola virus and a suppressant for aggressive emotions, a formula designed to eliminate anger, but that ended up unleashing its most uncontrollable version. The result was a compound as unstable as it was lethal, one that didn't just erase empathy and judgment, but ignited absolute fury in a matter of seconds. A single drop of blood, a scratch, the slightest contact is enough to turn any person into a killing machine. The transformation is instant, less than 20 seconds, and that speed is what made the outbreak a global catastrophe. Impossible to predict and impossible to stop. The first infected were pure instinct. They didn't eat, they didn't sleep, they didn't communicate, they only attacked. During the day, the newly infected ruled with explosive energy. At night, the older ones, worn but still active, came back to hunt. Even then, something terrifying was becoming clear. The virus wasn't just surviving. It was adapting to its environment. That's why, at the end of 28 days later, a seemingly logical hypothesis emerged that the infected would die off on their own, from hunger or exhaustion, that it was only a matter of time. But that illusion crumbled in 28 years later. The virus didn't disappear. It hid. It reconfigured. And it came back stronger. And what's most chilling is that all of this had already been hinted at. In the official comics, one of the scientists involved in the original project admits something crucial, that the combination of agents, which created Rage, was never stable. That its evolution was only a matter of time. That what they created was a life form capable of mutation and of learning. In 28 weeks later, we saw the virus return with more fury, more speed, and above all, more reach. Chaos erupted once again in the UK, but by the end of that sequel, one thing was clear. The virus was no longer confined. Paris was infected, and if we remember that 28 days later mentions New York, everything suggests that the contagion crossed borders long before we thought. However, Alex Garland, screenwriter of this new installment, reveals an important detail. According to official Canon, rage never fully spread beyond the British Isles. Why? Because of drastic measures, bombings, extreme isolation, unthinkable quarantines. The world contained the virus, but it never destroyed it. And for almost 3 decades, it evolved in silence, like a sleeping beast waiting for its moment to awaken. That moment has arrived, and what we now face is no longer the rage we once knew. It is a much smarter, more selective, more ferocious version. Some infected have learned to feed, to survive. They no longer attack for no reason. They attack out of necessity, to stay alive, to preserve the infection. In this new film, the classic scenes of bloody vomiting have vanished. Not because the virus has lost its power, on the contrary, because it has developed new methods of contagion. More subtle, more effective, and far more terrifying. And as if that weren't enough, 28 years later presents us with an absolutely chilling twist. Some infected have begun to reproduce. Not symbolically, physiologically. They have children, completely human, healthy babies until they're infected by their own parents, or in the most extreme cases, devoured by them. A horror paradox that breaks all the molds of biological horror cinema. This changes everything, because rage is not a fleeting threat. It's a new stage of human evolution, twisted, distorted, and dangerous. We are no longer dealing with an outbreak. We're dealing with a new form of life. A system that doesn't need machines or technology. It only needs rage and bodies to inhabit. The question now isn't whether it can be stopped. The real question is, how long until it's unleashed again? What are we willing to do when fury knocks on our door once more? And if you want me to reveal the exact timeline of every outbreak, every turning point, and every secret hidden between the lines of the comics and the films, leave a comment, subscribe, and hit that like button so I know. As the rage virus continues its silent yet unstoppable spread, one reality becomes increasingly hard to ignore. Its growth hasn't stopped. It no longer advances like a violent blaze, consuming everything in its path, but rather like an underground fire, unseen yet constant, burning just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to erupt again. That apparent calm is, in fact, its new form of warfare, a strategy of adaptation. The virus is no longer just an immediate force of destruction. It has become a patient infection, one that infiltrates, transforms, and multiplies without making a sound. And that is perhaps the most terrifying thing of all. What's even more disturbing is that its spread no longer relies solely on direct transmission through blood or bodily fluids. In 28 years later, it is suggested that some infected individuals are capable of biologically producing healthy offspring. For a moment, that revelation seems to offer a glimmer of hope, an immune generation, a possible natural cure, but that illusion quickly vanishes. Because those children, the moment they are born, are not just exposed to the virus. They're surrounded by it. Their own parents, driven by warped instincts, can infect them within seconds or, in the most brutal cases, devour them without hesitation. There is no redemption here, only a cruel, chilling blur between life and damnation. And as if that weren't enough to shake the viewer, the newest installment of the saga introduces 2 new forms of infection, 2 mutations that completely rewrite the rules of the game. The so-called slow lows, nicknamed the swollen by the oldest survivors, and the fearsome alphas, also known as berserkers by those unlucky enough to survive one of their attacks. The slow lows are a disturbing anomaly within the ecosystem of the infected. They don't charge, they don't scream, they don't attack with the uncontrollable fury typical of the original rage virus. In fact, at first glance, they don't even appear dangerous, but they are, deeply so. According to theories from some scientists in the saga's extended universe, They emerged as a mutation favored by stagnant environments, perpetual humidity, prolonged contact with contaminated soil, darkness, and above all, time. Their bodies are grotesquely deformed, swollen to absurd proportions. Their skin is cracked and covered in a mix of mud, fungi, roots, and oozing scabs, more like bark than human tissue. They move slowly, dragging themselves across the ground like forgotten remnants of another era. Hairless, expressionless, without urgency, they feed on the most basic things: worms, insects, waste. And that has allowed them to survive longer than any other known infected. Their aggression isn't constant, but dormant, asleep. But if they feel threatened, they awaken with unexpected strength and can kill with the fury of a wounded animal. Their slowness, paradoxically, makes them even more terrifying, because they don't attack on impulse. They wait. They observe. One of the most chilling details revealed in a classified file is that some slow lows weren't adults when they were infected. One in particular, a girl barely 7 years old, wanders aimlessly with hollow eyes and skin covered in fungus. This confirms that they aren't simply adults who have degenerated over time, but the product of a new strain, a variant of rage that doesn't induce immediate fury, but a morbid passivity that mutates into suppressed violence. On the opposite end of the spectrum are the alphas. If the slow lows represent the virus in its latent state, the alphas are the ultimate embodiment of unleashed rage. Their transformation goes far beyond mental collapse. It's a total physical mutation. Their metabolism accelerates like a storm. Hormones like testosterone, adrenaline, and growth hormones spike to levels unseen in any other living creature. Their bodies become war machines. Alphas are towering muscular giants, with reinforced skin, densified bones, and a pain resistance bordering on the absurd. They can run for miles without slowing down. They tear through doors, walls, and skulls with their bare hands. In one devastating scene, Jay, Spike's father, claims it takes more than a dozen arrows to bring one down. Soon after, we see it with our own eyes. An alpha takes a crossbow bolt to the chest and doesn't stop. Doesn't even flinch. It keeps moving forward, as if pain were a concept that no longer applies. The only way to stop them is with severe, targeted damage, massive blows to the skull or chest. And even then, some get back up, as if something inside them regenerates faster than it can be destroyed. Some survivors resort to spears, stakes, even improvised weapons made from sharpened bones or farming tools, anything that can pierce their mutated armor. But the most unsettling thing about the alphas is not their strength. It's their mind, because they retain a kind of intelligence that sets them apart from other infected. They don't speak, but they communicate through growls, screeches, and rudimentary signals. They've been seen leading groups, organizing ambushes, even sharing resources, pushing other infected toward water sources or safe zones, as if they understand the need to preserve the pack. And then there's the ritualistic behavior. Inexplicable. After killing, alphas rip the heads off their victims, along with part of the spinal column, and place these remains in high places: trees, poles, rooftops. It's not decoration. It's not art. It's a primal instinct, a gesture of dominance, a territorial marker, as if we were facing a completely new species, one that remembers its savage origins. At this point, rage is no longer just a virus. It has begun to behave like an evolutionary force, a tool of natural selection that strips humanity of everything that civilizes it and amplifies everything that makes it dangerous.